Good morning, AP. Happy Good Friday. Um, Happy Easter while I'm thinking about it, and happy Passover if you are leaning that way, or happy weekend, whatever. Anyway, I posted a couple things if you didn't see them about. One was about the ABC Countdown, and one was about the AP exam. They're both quite involved. But if you are interested or taking the AP exam or interested in the ABC Countdown, you might check that out and kind of talk to each other about what you want to do. Um, Thought it might be fun to do. So, anyway, today I'm going to close out bureaucracy. I've just got two things. One is going to be on page 2 at the very top where it says that's a big old 10-4 rubber duck. Um, if you ever get the chance, if you've never heard it, make it a point to listen to the song Convoy, one of the European three worst songs ever recorded in my view. So let's just start with that, and then we'll do the good and the bad of bureaucracy on the last page, and that'll be that. Okay, cost benefit ratios are what government uses in theory, in big theory, and it's kind of what it sounds like. Where you think about, should we think about the corona thing, about the costs and benefits of the quarantine thing. Okay, when you think about, you basically weigh the costs versus the benefits, and if the costs outweigh the benefits, you don't do it. If the benefits outweigh the costs, you do it. I mean, that's the theory. But when you think about costs, think about things like monetary costs. Obviously, we got to let people not work, but we can let them work some because we can have delivery, we can have takeout for restaurants, we can have essential businesses, and deciding what exactly essential is and all that. There are social costs to think about. You're going nuts. You and your parents are probably driving each other nuts. You can't see your friends. If you're dating someone, you can't smoochy, and so on and so forth. Those are social costs. Also, the idea of isolation, and when you do see people, are you likely to sort of veer away from them or turn away from them? I've caught myself doing this. That whole 6 feet distance thing and all that, and how quickly will that get back to quote normal? Will we ever shake hands again? Will we ever high five? Will we ever hug and kiss, and not kiss, but like your grandparents and stuff? Are you fearful of that, and for how long? Those are social costs. I think about political costs. Trump, frankly, his reelection bid hinges a lot on this. If we get through this and it looks like it's great and so on and so forth, he can really brag, which he will. Um, Look what happened. But if the political costs are, we're going to shut down. That's what if you remember this, when they passed that stimulus, the Democrats kind of blocked the bill, saying we got to have an minimum wage increase, and we got to minority-owned stuff and all that, and they backed out very quickly because they realized the political costs were not going to be there, and the cost outweighed the political benefit. Excuse me, the political costs were going to outweigh that, so they backed off very quietly in the middle of the night, kind of thing. So that's something else to think about. So political, social, monetary, that covers a lot of area. And then the benefits, the benefits would be we have less virus, less death, more confidence going forward. And if we can just get through this, then the stock market and the economy and people are going to be all this pent up desire to buy things and go do stuff, and that can only help business and mental health and so on and so forth. So basically, cost benefit ratios. You do this with, should I go to Florida for spring break? It's going to cost this much money. It's going to take. I can't work, but I'm going to have fun. I'm going to, create memories, get to go to Disney or get to go to the beach or whatever. And theoretically, if the cost outweigh, or again, if the benefits outweigh the cost, you do it. If the cost outweigh the benefits, you don't. Now, does government always do this? Of course not. A lot of times, you might do a cost benefit ratio, and the numbers come back negative. You shouldn't. Well, why did the Democrats do that? That stimulus thing. Why did they put all those conditions? Because they wanted to. Because how often do you listen to advice you don't want to hear, and then probably later on you're like, well, I should have listened to this. it's the same basic idea that if you've got a pet project, something you've loved for years, and the numbers really don't add up, you still do it because you simply want to. And believe it or not, there are people in government that are a bit hard-headed and stubborn. So that's kind of what you get. So that's all you need to know about that. Okay, it's again stuff that happens every day in real life. Okay, last thing, go back to the last page where it says they're penetrating the bureaucracy. And by the way, nobody's gotten the extra credit yet that I could find. I'm still looking for that. Okay, the last thing here is that you see the little smiley face and the little sad face. The smiley face are kind of the good things about bureaucracy, and the sad face are the bad things. Okay, so I've already talked to you about iron triangles and issue networks. But mainly the theory here is that bureaucrats, because they're not elected, because they're not partisan, which, yes, they are, but they can share different things, whether it's across like the triangles or the networks, or things like we've talked about already, the FBI coming in and helping on a case where Levi Rodriguez got killed in Dollar General and all that. Or now with the federal government helping out, sending the National Guard in or something like that to help with coronavirus stuff or whatever it is, or sending masks and respirators and ventilators where they're most needed. That's a good example of sharing information, or in this case, material. Okay. Secondly, where it says we see all sides clearly, again, in theory, they are not biased. They simply, the lady at the license branch, when you go get your driver's license, she's not like, well, I'm a Democrat, and if you're a Republican, I'm going to charge you extra. She just gives you the license. But at higher levels, that can be a thing, because what often happens, and this becomes sort of a problem, is that you see it, the deep state we've talked about. If you've got bureaucrats that don't like Donald Trump and he says, here's what we're going to do, they can do lots of things to not do it. Sort of drag their feet, or just ignore it, or do it wrong and try to subtly sabotage things. And you do see that for sure. And then finally, the last thing where it says SNL every day, this is that coordination and cooperation. So A and C kind of go together, but just think about that, coordinating the different levels. After hurricanes is a good example. When the federal government comes in with supplies, they come in with the agents and things like that to help clean up, and sometimes the Army comes in and helps clean up that stuff. Okay, so coordination and cooperation between the three different levels, state, national, and local, is what SNL is. And then last, we have the negatives. It's hard to fire. I've told you before, it's hard for me to get fired. Bureaucrats, they have these little turf, picture this room full of cubicles. That's why I put the Office Space thing on the bottom of that picture if you don't know it. Good stuff. It's my swing line stapler. But they're hard to fire. They kind of carve out this little turf, and you become necessary and needed. And no president wants to come in and say, we're going to fire a bunch of bureaucrats. Well, Trump says it, but he doesn't really do it, because do you want to be laying off 1 million workers when unemployment goes up, and then you get blamed for it, and so on. So hard to fire, deeply entrenched in their job. They've got this, like I said, this kind of niche carved out. And even if their duties change, or the focus, if you remember, the president, kind of comes in with new ideas. We're going to do fracking. We're going to forget the school lunch thing and all that. Those people generally find ways to stay in jobs somewhere, somehow. And then finally, the last one, bureaucrats are known for being inefficient. If you've ever been to the courthouse, you know what I'm talking about. Sometimes the license branch has gotten way better. Post office has gotten way better. And schools, frankly, you got a lot of slow response time. Things don't really work. When Obamacare first passed, the rollout of the website was delayed a couple times. And then when it finally came up, it crashed, like within minutes. And I know they've had problems with the corona stuff like that. Like one hand says this, the other hand says this, and what's exactly going on. So think about slow response time getting shuffled around. That's not my department. I'm going to have to get back with you on that. In the meantime, would you call this number? And you call that number, and they say, no, you need to go to this number. And then eventually they come back to the original number you call. This has happened to me before. So those are your main problems. Okay, so think about the good, the bad, and cost-benefit ratios. If I give you any kind of little writing on that, this will be a quick one. So, yeah. Otherwise, enjoy your weekend. All right, take care.